Clara stood at the entrance of the prestigious Pinewood Tennis Club, her heart pounding as she glanced around. The sun gleamed off the manicured lawns and perfectly tended flower beds, and the elegant clubhouse loomed ahead, a symbol of everything she felt she didn't belong to. Her simple white sportswear felt almost comical against the backdrop of high-end gear and bespoke outfits worn by the other members bustling about. This was her first time here, her first match in this exclusive setting, and despite the flutter of excitement, a knot of doubt tightened in her stomach. She adjusted the strap of her old tennis bag and took a breath. The air smelled of freshly cut grass mixed with the faint scent of expensive cologne and the buttery aroma of snacks from the clubhouse kitchen. Every step she took on the pathway toward the courts was measured, careful, as if any misstep might confirm what others already suspected. Clara wasn't naive, she knew she would stand out. But she also knew she had her skills, and they were why she had accepted the invitation to join the tournament today. From across the court, a sharp voice cut through the quiet hum of pre-match chatter. Helena, impeccably dressed in a pale pink tennis outfit that matched her expensive attitude, approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was one of the club's most influential members, polished, poised, and wielding her status like a weapon. Helena's gaze swept over Clara, her plain outfit, simple bag, and hesitant smile. "You must be the new player," Helena said, her tone iced with thinly veiled disdain. "I wonder if you really belong here. This is a place for those who understand tradition, not for outsiders." The gathered onlookers paused, their murmurs rising as Clara met Helena's gaze with quiet resolve. The tension between Helena and Clara had barely settled when the club manager, a tall man named Gregory with a crisp suit and an even crisper expression, approached with two men in dark blazers subtly marked security. They were the kind of presence designed to discourage trouble before it began. Gregory's eyes flickered to Clara, then to Helena, as if seeking permission. Helena smiled, slender fingers tapping impatiently against her racket handle. "I think it's best if you stick close by, Clara," she said smoothly. "Just so you don't disrupt the atmosphere." Clara's lips pressed together tightly, the sting of humiliation warming her cheeks. She had hoped to blend in as quietly as possible, to prove herself without fanfare, but this was the opposite of subtle acceptance. The security detail shadowing her every move was a glaring signal: she was not welcome here. The gathered cluster of well-dressed spectators watched eagerly. Some exchanged amused glances, clearly enjoying the unfolding drama. A few whispered in hushed tones, some sympathetic, others judgmental. An older woman in a silk scarf murmured, "I'm not sure she's ready for this stage," while a younger man rolled his eyes and muttered something about social climbers. Clara tried to focus on the upcoming game, but Helena's voice pierced the air as she addressed the spectators loudly enough for all to hear. "I've watched her play before. She's never been consistent, if at all. Let's see if she can last a single match without embarrassingly failing." Helena's words drew a ripple of laughter from some corners. Clara's stomach clenched, but she tightened her grip on the racket and met Helena's gaze calmly. She refused to let the biting words define her. The match began under the bright afternoon sun. Clara's first serves were tentative but steadily gained strength and precision. Each time she hit the ball with controlled power, she felt a flicker of hope. But Helena wasn't done. From the sidelines, she shouted critiques with a venom that made Clara's skin crawl. "Watch your footwork. That serve is amateurish. Honestly, who let her in here?" The crowd's amusement grew. Some smirked and exchanged sideways glances, others whispered, "She should just give up." Despite the noise, Clara found a rhythm on the court, her muscles recalling movements she knew better than any scrutiny. She blocked out the distractions as best she could, but every pointed jab from Helena stung more than the last. Halfway through the match, Clara stumbled on a wide volley, missing a chance to score. The crack of the ball against the ground sounded loud in the hush that followed. Helena leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Told you she wouldn't last," she said, her tone practically dripping with triumph. A ripple of laughter followed, and a few spectators began shifting their attention from the game to their phones, filing social updates or grimacing at Clara's obvious discomfort. After the match, which Clara lost narrowly but with unexpected skill, she gathered her things and moved toward the exit. Her cheeks burned, not only from the heat but the crushing sense of shame. She was tempted to leave without a word, to escape the whispers and judgments that clung to her like a dark cloud. But she was stopped by Helena's sharp voice once more. "Oh no, Clara," Helena called out, her smile impossibly cold. "You're not going anywhere just yet. The tournament isn't over until we all have a good laugh." Security flanked Clara again, ensuring she stayed in the mix despite her retreating instincts. The crowd's attention polarized, some chewing on popcorn, eager to watch the unfolding spectacle, others quietly beginning to feel the weight of cruelty in the air. Clara's knees trembled. She wanted to sink through the polished wooden floor of the clubhouse veranda, to disappear into the well-manicured hedges surrounding the courts. What was she doing here? Did she even deserve to be? A cluster of club members had gathered nearby, their conversations a mix of disbelief and amusement. One particularly bold man joked, "Maybe next time she'll wear something less pathetic and more appropriate for the upper crust." Behind the laughter, Clara heard an unexpected voice, a soft murmur from someone close to her but not part of the mocking crowd. "Don't listen to them," whispered Evelyn, a gentle-faced woman with kind eyes who had been watching quietly from the sidelines. "You played well. Better than they expected." Clara nodded faintly, grateful for the small kindness, though it didn't erase the broader mist of humiliation settling around her like a suffocating cloak. Helena turned to address the entire group, raising her voice for dramatic effect. "Let's remind ourselves, this club is not for show-offs or pretenders. It's a community of tradition and excellence. We can't have just anyone walking in here thinking it's a playground." Her words stirred a new murmur of agreement, most nodding along, while Clara felt the sting of exclusion like a cold January breeze. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she'd come here to prove something to herself if no one else. Yet Helena's gaze narrowed in triumph as she laid out the conditions. Clara was to play the next match, one more chance to show what she's really made of. Any sign of weakness, and Helena promised, not so subtly, that Clara would be asked to leave the club and lose any hope of joining the elite circle. Clara's hands shook slightly as she accepted the challenge. The buzz of whispers sharpened into a dull roar in her ears. She was alone against a tide of judgment and sneering expectation, her every move scrutinized like an exhibition. "I won't give up," she whispered under her breath, more to steady herself than to anyone else. The crowd leaned in, sensing the next act in this drama. People surrounded the court, phones ready, eyes narrowed. Would Clara crumble under pressure? Could she defy not only Helena but the harsh social codes demanding her failure? The sun dipped lower, casting elongated shadows across the smooth courts. Clara stood in the middle of the arena, racket in hand, under a sky turning pale gold. The air was heavy with anticipation and something sharper, raw human tension, the kind that made hearts beat faster, and jaws clenched tighter. Some faces glimmered with excitement, others with judgment. But somewhere deep inside, Clara felt a flicker of determination. This was her moment. Whether she faltered or flourished, she would face it head-on. Around her, the murmurs swelled, the collective breath held in wait. All eyes were on Clara. The question lingered, unspoken but clear: would she rise or fall? If you were Clara, what would you do? Clara wiped the sweat from her brow as the sun continued its slow descent, warming the court with a golden glow that felt almost like a spotlight was trained squarely on her. She had heard the whispers, seen the sideways glances, and felt the weight of every judgmental eye fixed upon her. Yet, beneath the trembling nerves, a quiet fire kindled inside her. The time for doubt was over. Now it was about action. She gripped her racket tighter, feeling the familiar grooves worn smooth from years of practice. Despite the casual attire and the modest exterior she carried today, inside her lived the precision and power of someone who had dedicated her life to tennis. It was a fact the crowd hadn't yet realized, but that would soon become impossible to ignore. The next match was against one of Helena's favorite protégés, a wiry young man named Marcus whose serve was fast and ruthless, and whose confidence seemed born more from privilege than skill. As Marcus bounced the ball on his side of the net, Clara took a deep breath, centering herself in the midst of the murmurs and watchful stares. When she served, the ball flew over the net with sharp accuracy. It was her opening statement, spoken not in words but in every crisp hit. The crowd yawned initially, expecting an amateur show, but the energy shifted quickly as Clara began to command the court. Her movements were assured and fluid, a dance of agility and strength that held a surprising grace. She sliced the ball expertly, sending it darting past Marcus with sly, calculated angles. Her footwork was impeccable, slipping light and fast over the cracked surface, her eyes sharp and patient. Helena's lips thinned into a frown, her posture rigid. The man beside her whispered something, but Helena only shook her head slightly, as if refusing to acknowledge the reality unwinding before them. Several points into the game, Clara unleashed a serve so powerful it almost screamed across the net, earning an impressed murmur from the crowd. Marcus fumbled the return, and for a moment, the balance of the match tipped in Clara's favor. The audience started leaning forward on benches and railings, the initial ridicule replaced by genuine shock and growing admiration. A few watchers whispered, "Where did she learn to play like that?" and "She's incredible." Even the hardened faces of some club members softened, their eyes widening at Clara's unyielding tenacity and mastery. Helena's face drained of color. Her cold confidence melted into disbelief, and a flicker of something else, envy, tinged her expression. She leaned over to a friend beside her, muttering under her breath. But the damage was done. Clara was no longer a simple outsider, she had become the center of attention, dominating the narrative of the match. Every rally lengthened, filled with rallying power and tactical brilliance. Clara countered Marcus' aggressive swings with deft slices, placing the ball where he least expected. The crowd's murmurs grew into cheers, applause followed each spectacular point she made. A pounding rhythm filled the court and the area around it, blending Clara's heartbeat with the roar of approval from the onlookers. On Helena's side, the smirk disappeared completely, replaced by a rigid, forced smile. Her earlier words of dismissal echoed hollowly now in the ears of everyone present. She fiddled nervously with her bracelet, visibly shaken by Clara's undeniable skill. When the final point came, Clara's precise backhand aimed like an arrow into the far corner. Marcus couldn't reach it. The ball bounced off the court surface, sealing Clara's victory. The crowd erupted, some standing, clapping with wide smiles, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The sudden applause startled Clara. She looked out over the sea of faces, her chest heavy with relief and disbelief. A few moments ago, she had been the subject of scorn. Now she stood victorious, her reputation carved anew by her own hands. From the VIP seating, murmurs spread fast. "She's the real deal. How could we have doubted her?" Even some of Helena's staunchest allies were hesitant, their earlier loyalties dampened by Clara's undeniable presence. Clara's eyes locked across the court with Helena's. There was no longer the same smugness on Helena's face. Instead, her lips pressed into a thin line, tension radiating from her every gesture. It was a silent concession. Clara had taken the crown of the match and, more importantly, the respect so readily withheld before. Among the crowd, Evelyn stepped forward, clapping loudly while smiling warmly. "Brilliant game," she said as she made her way toward Clara. "You showed everyone exactly who you are." Clara forced a smile, still catching her breath. Her mind reeled as she replayed every swing, every serve, every painstaking moment of the match. She had held back for so long, preferring to hide the depth of her talent beneath modesty and simplicity. But today, she had no choice. This was not just about tennis, it was about staking her place where others had dismissed her. The undercurrent of victory in the air was electric, shifting the club atmosphere from suspicion to celebration. Helena's influence, once seemingly untouchable, now felt fragile. The members who had scoffed before glanced at one another awkwardly, unsure whether to stand by their old allegiances or embrace the surprising new reality. As the crowd began to disperse, Clara found herself surrounded by curious and respectful thumbs-up gestures from people who moments ago had been indifferent or hostile. "You were amazing out there," a young man said sincerely. "You've got skills that belong on any court." The very thought that she could earn a place among these players, these elites, filled Clara with cautious hope. But deeper still, Clara felt an awakening. It was as though the sport that had been buried under years of silence and modest living had reclaimed its rightful place inside her, and this victory was a promise, whispered on a sunlit court, that this was only the beginning. As the sun finally dipped below the trees, casting long evening shadows, Clara walked off the court with a quiet but stunning triumph radiating from her every movement. The day had turned on its head. The woman who had arrived quietly, doubted and dismissed, now held the crowd in the palm of her hand. The question that rippled through the air was no longer if Clara belonged here, but what she would do next. As the buzz from the match rippled through the club, Clara found herself a few steps away from the crowd, leaning against the cool wooden railing of the veranda. The warm evening breeze whispered through the flowering bushes around her, carrying the distant sound of laughter and clinking glasses. She watched the gathering slowly shift its tone, from curious amusement to genuine admiration, but beneath the surface, an old truth lingered: people rarely changed their impressions without knowing the story behind the person. Helena's sharp gaze still burned across the lawn, but Clara felt a quiet strength settling over her. It was time to let the truth surface, not with boasting, but with the kind of vulnerability that few expected. Earlier that morning, before she had walked onto the court for the first time, Clara had been sitting in a small, rented apartment miles from the polished world of Pinewood Tennis Club. A life she had embraced quietly, tucked away from the glare of spotlight and expectation. Clara was a former professional tennis player, someone who once battled in packed arenas and trained relentlessly under the unforgiving gaze of the international tennis circuit. Her name had flickered in headlines, not among the greatest, but respected and feared by many. Years ago, fatigue and personal setbacks had prompted her to step back. The endless travel, the pressure to always perform, and the ruthless business side of the sport had drained her spirit. When a family tragedy further pulled at her emotional reserves, Clara chose to vanish from the scene, retreating to a simpler life where her identity was not tied to her past successes or failures. Tonight, standing amid this elite social circle in simple attire, Clara had carried all that experience with her. The modest clothing, the quiet manner, the hesitation in her first moves, none of these defined her true identity. They were only the covering she had wrapped around herself, a shield born from years of wanting to be judged solely by what she could do on the court, not by the baggage of her history. The stories she now told herself were of resilience, learning to plant new roots after an uprooted past. Clara's simple outfit was not a symbol of inadequacy, but of rebirth. She had come to Pinewood Tennis Club to find herself again, to rekindle a passion long buried beneath doubt and scarcity of self-belief. Evelyn's smile that afternoon had felt like an anchor. "You have a strength hidden beneath that quiet exterior," Evelyn said softly. "We all do, in ways others might never see." Helena, on the other hand, had chosen to wield status and prejudice like sharp swords. Yet Clara's sudden mastery of the court challenged not just Helena's assumptions, but the entire club culture that prized appearance over substance. Over the course of the evening, whispers spread. Questions floated in the air. Who exactly is Clara? Is she really a former pro? Why the sudden reappearance? Some members began to approach Clara more cautiously, their curiosity tempered by the dawning realization that they had judged her too hastily. A few approached hesitantly, offering apologies or compliments, still awkward but genuine. Among them was Marcus, the young player defeated so convincingly. He extended a hand, his earlier cockiness softened. "I didn't expect that level of play. You've got something special." Clara smiled, the warmth in her heart growing with each encounter, but the moment that stayed with her most was when Helena herself walked over, her usual confident facade replaced by a less comfortable vulnerability. "I underestimated you," Helena admitted quietly, eyes flickering with something like regret. "I thought you were different." Clara nodded, sensing the complexity beneath the words. "I'm more than I appeared today. So are we all." In that exchange, a fragile truce formed, a seed of change beginning to grow. Later, as the crowd thinned and the stars edged into the sky, Clara stood alone for a moment, gazing at the polished courts bathed in moonlight. Her journey was far from over. This night marked not an ending, but a new chapter, one in which she no longer needed to hide beneath simplicity or silence. The revelation of her past, combined with the undeniable proof of her skill, had shifted the landscape of the club forever. Behind the polished facades and whispered judgments, Clara had quietly rewritten her story, demonstrating that true worth defies labels and first impressions. She thought of the path ahead, knowing that her challenge now was not only to maintain her place in this circle but to reshape the very ideas that had once sought to exclude her. As she packed her gear in preparation for the final tournament match with Helena, anticipation simmered beneath the surface. The respect she had earned came with new pressures and expectations, but Clara welcomed them. For the first time in a long time, she felt alive, seen, and ready. Tonight, her simple outfit was no longer a mask but a reminder: underneath the surface lies a world of strength, waiting to be claimed. In the quiet moments before the final act, Clara allowed herself to feel the fullness of that truth. She was no longer the woman who arrived uncertain and overshadowed. She was a competitor, a survivor, and soon, she would prove beyond doubt that simple doesn't mean weak, and belonging is about more than appearances. The court awaited, the crowd buzzed softly with excitement, and Clara walked forward, every step carrying the stories of a past reclaimed and a future boldly embraced. The morning of the final match dawned clear and crisp, the sun casting sharp light over the immaculate courts of Pinewood Tennis Club. The air hummed with anticipation, a blend of nervous excitement and curiosity permeating the gathered crowd. It was the culmination of a story that had enthralled the members over the past days. Clara, the simple woman once dismissed, now standing on the edge of her greatest triumph. Helena arrived early, her usual impeccably styled hair slightly less composed than usual, her posture taut with a mixture of determination and unease. Word had spread quickly after Clara's stunning performance, whispers of her true background and talent circulated, shaking the foundation of Helena's previously undisputed influence within the club. The sharp glances and quiet exchanges among the members hinted at the shifting allegiances forming in Clara's favor. From the sidelines, Gregory, the club manager, approached Helena discreetly. His expression was stern but measured. "Madam Helena, the committee has reviewed your conduct from the tournament," he said quietly, eyes locking with hers. "Your public disparagement and attempts to ostracize Clara were deemed unbecoming of a member of this club. We expect an apology to her, and failure to comply could affect your standing here." Helena's lip curled briefly in defiance, but the weight of the club's authority, and the murmurs of discontent among those around her, pressed in. For the first time since the tournament began, Helena tasted the bitter fruit of accountability. Meanwhile, Clara prepared in the locker room, a calm settling over her that surprised even herself. The weeks of solitary practice, the quiet evenings spent rebuilding her confidence, all converged into this singular moment. Her simple attire felt like an armor of authenticity. She had no need for pretense, her skill spoke louder than any designer label. Evelyn was by her side, offering quiet encouragement. "No matter what happens out there, you've already won the respect of many," she whispered. "Play for yourself." Clara nodded, grateful for the support but inwardly focused. Her mind traced memories of the long road here, the tournaments she had left behind, the silence she'd embraced, and the courage it took to step back into the ring. The match began, a tension-filled dance between Clara and Helena. Helena unleashed aggressive serves, aiming to intimidate, but Clara met each with steady precision, her years of experience evident in her swift responses and strategic plays. It wasn't merely skill on display, it was a quiet assertion of her identity and strength. The audience was captivated, the air thrummed with the rhythm of rally and counter-rally. Helena's confident veneer cracked with every point Clara claimed. The jeers and snide remarks from earlier days were replaced with gasps of surprise and genuine cheers. At one critical moment, Helena made a rare error, missing an easy return. Her frustration flared visibly, fingers tightening around her racket, eyes flashing with anger. Clara's gentle smile was unshaken, a stark contrast to Helena's unraveling composure. When Clara finally clinched victory, the crowd erupted in applause, some standing, some with tears glistening in their eyes. The power dynamic had fully reversed. The woman once mocked was now celebrated as the champion. As the applauding members gathered around Clara, Helena approached her cautiously. The hostility in her eyes dimmed, replaced by a reluctant respect. "Your skill was undeniable," she said quietly, voice low but sincere. "I was wrong." Clara met her gaze steadily. "Thank you. Everyone deserves the chance to prove themselves." Helena nodded, a subtle tension easing between them. Gregory stepped forward as well, presenting Clara with an official invitation to become a full member of the Pinewood Tennis Club. The gesture was more than symbolic, it signaled Clara's rightful place in this world she'd long yearned to rejoin. In the days following, Helena reflected deeply on her actions, the pride that had blinded her and the harsh judgments that nearly cost her the respect of her peers. She began making subtle amends, offering genuine apologies and acknowledging the strength Clara had shown. The club atmosphere shifted too. Discussions arose about inclusivity and the dangers of superficial judgments, igniting small but meaningful changes to how new members were welcomed. Clara herself embraced the new chapter with humility and grace. She balanced her presence at Pinewood with continued quiet moments of reflection, never forgetting the path that had led her here. The simplicity she once thought a liability now felt like the foundation of her strength. One afternoon, as Clara practiced on the court with Evelyn, a gentle reminder emerged in the rhythm of the ball striking the racket, a symbol not just of triumph, but of growth, resilience, and the power of overlooked potential. As this story draws to a close, it raises a question for you, the listener. If you found yourself judged unfairly, dismissed because of appearance or background, would you have the courage to stand firm as Clara did? Or would doubt and fear hold you back? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice adds to the conversation and reminds us all of the importance of seeing beyond the surface. If Clara's journey moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that celebrate strength, humanity, and unexpected triumphs. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep believing in the power of resilience and kindness.